So we're missing almost half the class still. Um, Go to Canvas, read the section on concerns with population growth. Okay. Canvas, concerns with population growth.
Stop asking research questions to ChatGPT. Its answers are not reliable, and they are difficult. If being alive on Earth was some kind of contest.
Okay. All righty. Good morning. Good morning. I think we got almost everybody, so we're going to go ahead and get started. All right. So good morning to those of you who just joined. We are reading for a minute in Canvas. So let me go ahead and share that for a minute. And then we're going to watch a video. And then we're going to do a worksheet. Okay, so everybody should be here. Still trying to let folks in. I think sometimes folks get stuck, and I don't want you to be. All right, Isaiah, you're in, but it's still showing you in my waiting room. But I see you. You're there. Okay. All right. And Jayla, I got your message. Okay, there it goes. Finally out of the waiting room. Okay, so take a few minutes to read this over. Like I lost somebody. Um, and then we're going to, most particularly, we're going to watch this one. All right, so read this over and then we're going to watch this video together. So take a few minutes. I don't want to read it to you. We want to look at all of the problems that the people are causing with the world. And then we're going to watch that video together, and then I'll have a activity for you to do in a few minutes. So while I do attendance, you are reading, you are in Canvas, and you are reading. Okay. All right. All right, again, good morning, good morning. You are in Canvas. You are reading Human Concerns with Population Growth. If you just came in, we're in Canvas, reading Human Concerns with Population Growth. All right, Lucas, are you there? Tegan, are you there? Because Go Guardian says you're not. All right. Okay. Avery, I thought I just let you in. Guess not. All right, again, I do attendance by looking at Go Guardian, so please make sure that when I'm looking at Go Guardian, I see you in Canvas. I got 3 people that I don't see in Canvas. Where everybody's in concerns with human populations is HPG. HPG, concerns with human population. That's the module we're in. Tegan, are you with us? All right, we're going to watch that video together. So hang on, read everything up to the video. As soon as I do attendance, we will watch that together and then look at an activity that I need you to do. All Okay. All right, so again, this is Monday, so we probably need to just backtrack a little bit. We've been talking about population. We looked at demographics, different ways to, and actually you're going to do a graph today. So it may help that you go back and look at some of the graphing information, but we looked at the effect of birth rate, We looked at how these graphs are shaped. They're usually done male and female. They compare certain statistics over a period of time, and they compare to the age group. So there's different ways to look at. So this one is looking at the populations according to male and female and in different parts of the world. So we're going to, and we did, if you haven't done this activity, please make sure that you have. And then we're looking at, and everybody's turned in their plot graph one. So today we're looking at humans, what we do, and how it affects the population of the world, how it affects the land, how it affects water, how it affects energy use, and then limiting factors. Those are things that will limit how big the population can grow. It'll limit where the population will grow, what parts of the world. So we're mostly concerned with limiting factors. Biotic, again, are our living factors. Abiotic are our non-living factors. And both of these contribute to where people will live and what they will do. All right, so we're going to watch this together.
If being alive on Earth were some kind of contest, humans, I think, would win it hands down. As a population of organisms, we're the Michael Phelps of being alive, only we have like 250,000 times more gold medals. Last week, we talked about exponential growth, when a population grows at a rate proportional to the size of the population, even as that size of the population keeps increasing. Well, since around the year 1650, the human population has been undergoing probably the longest period of exponential growth of any large animal in history ever. In 1650, there were about 500 million people on the planet. By 1850, the population had doubled to 1 billion. And it doubled again just 80 years after that, and doubled again just 45 years after that. We are now well past 7 billion and counting. So think about this. Today, there are 80-year-olds who have watched the population of their species on Earth triple. So why is this happening? And how? And how long can it go on? Because it's kind of uncomfortable. Let's say you're shopping for dinner, and bear with me, we're gonna relate it back to ecology in a second, but you got a lot of choices at your grocery store. You could buy 5 packs of ramen for $1, or you could buy some fancy ravioli made by Italian nuns out of organic pasta for like $20 a pound. They're both noodles, they're both food, but you know, with the ramen you get more, whereas with the handmade stuff it tastes better, higher quality. What do? It's a perennial problem in nature and in our lives, satisfying the two competing impulses. Do I have more, or do I have the best? Quantity or quality? Tough choice. Although we're not really aware of it, all organisms make a similar choice through how they reproduce. In ecology, we size up who chooses quantity over quality by something called the R versus K selection theory. The R versus K selection theory says that some organisms will reproduce in a way that aims for huge exponential growth, while others are just content to hit the number of individuals that their habitat can support. That is, the carrying capacity, and then stay around that level. Species that reproduce in a way that leads to very fast growth are called R-selected species, because R is the maximum growth rate of a population when you're talking math talk, as we learned last week. Very strongly R-selected animals make a lot of babies in their lifetime and just...
Oops, sorry. I paused it for a minute. I wanted to make sure that I'm going to back it up just a little bit. He used a couple of vocabulary words that you should make sure that you Understand.
really aware of it, all pasta for like $20 a pound. They're both noodles, they're both food, but you know,
I'll
with the
pause it again.
ramen you get more, whereas with the handmade stuff it tastes better, higher quality. What do you do? It's a perennial problem in nature and in our lives, satisfying the two competing impulses. Do I have more?
All right, so make sure that you write that down. A lot of population, human population issue deals with quantity versus quality. Quantity is the amount, and quality is the it's glitching bad on your side because this is in Canvas. It shouldn't glitch from your side. That's like say deciding, do I want to go to Walmart or do I want to go to Publix? Okay. Do I want to shop at Whole Foods or do I want, again, go to Walmart? So you can buy more stuff at Walmart, but you
Can
might be
you
looking.
repeat what you said to write down?
Just write down this phrase right here that's on the screen: quality versus quantity. Quality versus quantity affects population growth. And just one of the factors. Remember, we said before I started, I said we're going to have limiting factors. So quality versus quantity. How much I can get versus how good a product I can get. Am I having hamburgers or am I having filet mignon? Okay. All right, I'm going to pause it again. I backed this up because I wanted you to write down some things, but I'll pause it again when he says the next one.
Or do I have the best? Quantity or quality? Tough choice. Although we're not really aware of it, all organisms make a similar choice through how they reproduce. In ecology, we size up who chooses quantity over quality by something called the R versus K selection.
All right, that's the one I wanted. R versus K selection theory. All right, and he starts it down here. So if I move it along a little bit, it will show, but it says that some organisms will, I think I went too far. Okay. Some organisms will reproduce in a way that aims for huge exponential growth while others don't. So that's your R versus K selection theory. He's going to mention it again in just a minute.
Way that aims for huge exponential growth, while others are just content to hit the number of individuals that their habitat can support.
Okay, while others are content, or it says tend, while others tend to hit the number of individuals that their habitat can support. And that's where it stops, because then he's just going to say, this is your K theory factor. So know what your K versus R theory is. And even though I'm running this, we're watching together, you can go back and play it. You'll have time to go back and play it on your own.
Support, that is the carrying capacity, and then stay around that level.
All right, that's the other vocabulary word, carrying capacity. So remember, we looked at a graph that eventually went up and then it plateaued. So that's our carrying capacity. Okay. All right.
Species that reproduce in a way that leads to very fast growth are called R-selected species because R is the maximum growth rate of a population.
All right, know what R-selected species. Know what your R-selected species are.
when you're talking math talk, as we learned last week. Very strongly R-selected animals make a lot of babies in their lifetime and just hope that they make it. If some of the babies get eaten or something, no biggie. There are others where those came from. On the other hand, K-selected species only make a few babies in their lifetime, and they invest in them very heavily. K in math language is carrying capacity, since K...
All right, so again, now your R species and your K species. R species make a lot of babies, K species don't.
And they invest in them very heavily. K in math language is carrying capacity, since K-selected species usually end up living at population densities closer to their carrying capacity than R-selected ones. Of course, things aren't so cut and dry in nature, as most animals aren't very strongly K-selected or R-selected. It's actually, a spectrum. Some organisms, usually smallish ones, reproducing more on the R side, and others, usually larger ones, on the K side. Most species are somewhere in the middle. So the reason I'm telling you this is to drive home how bananas it is that humans have gotten to the population size we have. Because we tend to reproduce way on the K-selected side of the spectrum. We're pretty big mammals, usually only have a few kids during our lifetimes, and those kids are a total pain in the butt to raise, but we put a ton of resources into them anyway. So even though humans reproduce K-selected-ishly, for the past few centuries, our population growth curve has been looking suspiciously like that of an R-selected species. And exponential growth, even for R-selected species, usually does not go on for 350 years. So how did this all happen? Well, the short answer is humans figured out how to raise our carrying capacity so far indefinitely, and we did this by eliminating a bunch of obstacles that would have made our numbers level off at a carrying capacity a long, long time ago. These obstacles, you will recall, are limiting factors, and we managed to blast them to pieces.
All right, so again, make sure that you're aware of the term limiting factors, and he's going to talk about what those are.
In a few different ways. First, we've upped our ability to feed ourselves. Our crazy rapid population growth started in Europe around the 17th century because that's when agriculture was becoming mechanized. And fancy new farming practices like the domestication of animals and crops were increasing food production. From Europe, those agricultural practices and their accompanying population explosion spread to the New World and to much of the rest of the world by the mid-19th century. Another game changer for the human population came in the form of medical advances. Anton van Leeuwenhoek, father of microbiology, all-around really smart guy, was the first modern scientist to propose the germ theory of disease in 1700, and even though it took about a century and a half for people to take it seriously, it revolutionized human health, leading to things like vaccinations. Suddenly, people stopped dying of stupid avoidable stuff, as they had been for thousands of years, which meant that everybody lived longer, childhood survival rates improved, and those kids went on to make their own babies and get very, very old. And we also increased our carrying capacity by not being so disgusting. We figured that you can't just sit around in your own poop and live to tell the tale, so sewage systems became a thing. In Europe, at least, it started around the 1500s, but they weren't widely used until the 1800s, and we all benefited from that. And finally, we've gotten a lot better at living comfortably in inhospitable places. That is to say, people have been living in deserts and tundra for thousands of years, but in the 20th century we expanded the human habitat to pretty much everywhere in the world, thanks to heating and air conditioning and warm clothes and airplanes and trucks that bring food everywhere from Svalbard, Norway to New South Wales. So for all those reasons and more, humans have been able to avoid that old party pooper carrying capacity, which is good, because I don't like it when people die. It's just a downer. And a lot of smart scientists and mathematicians and economists have argued that each person born in the past 350 years has not only represented another mouth to feed, but also two hands to work to raise the human carrying capacity. Just enough for themselves and a teensy bit more. So then as the population grows, our carrying capacity grows right along with it, like some really steep escalator going up in the ceiling just above our heads, and if it stayed there, we'd all get squished, but it keeps moving. But of course, this can't go on forever. The human population does have a carrying capacity, it's just that nobody's sure what it is. Back in 1679, it was Leeuwenhoek himself who was the first to publicly hazard a guess about the Earth's carrying capacity for humans, guessing it to be around 13.4 billion people. Since then, estimates have ranged from 1 billion to 1 trillion, which is 1,000 billion, so that seems a little extreme, but the averages of these estimates are from 10 to 15 billion folks. And we need a lot of obvious things to survive: food, clean water, non-renewable resources like metals and fossil fuels, but everything that we consume requires space, whether it's space to grow, or space to mine, or produce, or put our waste. So a lot of ecologists make their estimates of how many people this planet can handle based on an ecological footprint, a calculation of how much land and how many resources each person on the planet requires to live. That footprint is very different depending on where you live and what your habits are. People in India use a lot fewer resources in their
I just paused it there just to remind you that we did ecological footprint at the beginning of this semester. So this is where you need to consider what your ecological footprint is when we're doing the activity.
For space than Americans, for example. Meat eaters require a lot more acreage than vegetarians. In fact, if everybody on the planet ate as much meat as the wealthiest people in the world do, current food harvests could feed less than half of the present world's population. So despite the fact that the Earth is a very big place, space is a real limiting factor for us, and as our population grows, there will probably be more conflict over how our space is used. For instance, if there really were 1 trillion people on the planet, everybody would have to live, grow food on, and poop on a 12 by 12 meter patch of ground, about half the size of a tennis court. So it could be that you could fit 1,000 billion people on Earth, but I can guarantee that those people would have a hard time getting along with each other. But how about we stop thinking about ourselves just for a moment? As we take up more space, we also leave less space for other species. And as we use resources like trees and soil and clean water, that reduces the amount available to all kinds of other organisms. This is why biologists say that we are currently living through one of the biggest extinction events in recent geological history. We're out competing other species for the very basics of life. And eventually, or in the case of oil and water already, we're starting to compete with ourselves as a species. So serious stuff here, but here's a little glimmer of hope. Unlike some other animals, a lot of our actions are based on a little thing called culture. And human culture has brought about some huge changes in the last 50 years. The fact is, even though the human population continues to grow, the rate of population growth actually peaked around 1962 and has been declining ever since. At its peak, the human population was growing at about 2.2% per year, and these days it's declined to about 1.1%. And it's still falling. Families in most industrialized countries are getting smaller and smaller. But why? Well, part of it has to do with women. As women in developed nations get more education, they're having babies later in life, and when an animal doesn't reproduce to its fullest potential, meaning it doesn't start having babies as soon as it's like sexually able to, that animal is going to have fewer offspring. Also, if you give women more choices and more education, they might be liable to choose a second career in astrophysics rather than becoming a mother. Another reason for the falling population growth rate has to do with the way that we live our lives. Back in the early 20th century, more of the world worked on farms and maybe ate their own food. Kids were a real asset to a farm back then. It's a good example of that idea about more hands doing more work to increase the carrying capacity of the human population. Yeah, kids were extra mouths to feed, but they were also a really important workforce, and you could just feed the kids the stuff you were producing. That's what we call a positive feedback loop. As the population grows, the workforce gets bigger, and the place, as a result, supports more of us. But these days, that's not happening so much anymore. More and more people are living in cities where you don't need kids to help with the crops, so fewer people are having them because A, they cost a lot of money to raise. B, they're not bringing in money like they were back on the farm. And C, a lot of people have access to good birth control, so they don't have as many oops children. All these factors together are forming a negative feedback loop. The effects of reproduction in this case work to slow down the rate of reproduction. But just because our population's growth rate is decreasing doesn't mean that this juggernaut of humanity is going to stop anytime soon. In addition to reminding us that the rules of ecology apply to us just like any other organism, human population is important to think about because we kind of need to do something about it. And I think pretty much every other species on the planet would agree with me on that. Thanks for watching this episode of Crash Course Ecology, and thanks to all the people who helped us put it together. If you want to review anything from this episode, there's a table of contents.
Alrighty. So we're going to worry about this activity later. What I want you to do right now is to look at your homepage. I want you should have an activity that says concerns with human population growth. All right, so you have a worksheet to download. All right, and it should look like that. Let me know if you cannot download it. And again, download it in such a way that you can write on it. All right, this one is the first page is giving you information. So they're giving you a year and the number of people. Okay, and the instructions are to place the time on the horizontal. That's at the bottom. And then they're giving you the years that they want you to have placed on the graph. And there's a graph attached. So you're not creating a graph. There's a graph attached. You just have to put these numbers on it. You're going to place the people on the vertical axis. So that means column number 1 is going across the bottom. That's your horizontal. Column number 2 is going on the vertical axis. So you want to space that out appropriately. All right, make sure your graph is a full page size so that you can have the correct Y. And then you don't have to create, like I said, you don't have to create the graph. You just have to complete it at the bottom. All right, so then you want to, after you've done the graph, so that means you want to, and hopefully you know how to plot a graph, okay? You want to put dots where all of these numbers exist, and then you want to connect the dots. And after you've connected the dots, you want to answer the analysis question. All right, so step 1, use this information to create a graph. Use the graph that's attached and put the range of years at the bottom, put dots where they should go according to the people corresponding with that year, and connect the dots, and then come back and analyze, answer the questions these questions up here, 1 through 5, based on your graph. And then this one is they give you a story to read, and then you're going to analyze the story by answering questions 6 through 10. Now, do me a favor, because last activity, some of your answers were all squished up. If you would type your answers in a different color. Okay, if you would type your answers, it makes it easier for me to read. Because some of your answers are kind of blurring in, and then some of them were all squished up. So it was difficult to read. So if you would please answer your questions in a different color so that it stands out from the text. Okay? All right, so we're taking the first page and we're making a graph using the graph that's provided. Then you're going to answer the analysis questions based on the way your graph was created. And then you're going to read this paragraph and answer the questions 6 through 10 based on the paragraph. Okay? Everybody good? Imani, why are we crying? Oh, relax. It's just take your time, take it easy. It looks like a lot, but it's really an easy exercise to do. Ethan, I'm in the student view, so let me come back out. All right, if you go to your home page, everybody, home page, those of you who don't know where I am, home page, concerns with population growth. Okay, this time I remembered to put the upload thing up. All right, so then you should click on, all right. Andre, let me see. It is not letting you don't see it on your to-do list? Is there anybody else who doesn't see it on their to-do list? Oh, you see it. Okay. All right, good. So it should say concerns with population growth. Okay. Andre, I would much rather you do this activity rather than write an essay. How about if is there anybody else having trouble downloading the worksheet? It's not showing in your files. It might show up in your files as human population growth. It might have a different title. Look for human population growth. That's actually the name of the file. Let me see what I can do here. I don't want an essay. We really want the answers to the questions. Mm. Trying to see if I can let you see it from. Mm-mm. Let me put this in here.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can I like draw out the graph on a piece of paper and then like take a picture and put the image on there?
Yes, you can. You
Okay, thanks.
absolutely can. All right. Okay. I was trying to get to. Let me see if I add the if I add the PDF to it, will that help? Yes, you can use a graph site. You probably, with the way things go these days, you can probably give it all the statistics from the chart. All right, Andre, how about we do that? I'm going to leave this up. I won't take it down. And if you can go to a site that will graph this for you. Then you can just download the picture of your graph and then you can answer the analysis questions. And then I will leave this up so that you can just read this paragraph and all right, so let's do it like that. I'm going to leave this page up so that you can see it. Ethan, if you find a site that will graph it for you, if you would put that link in the chat for me, please. So I would do it, but then that means I have to leave the page. All right, so I'm going to leave this up. Oh, no essay. No, I don't need an essay. I need. Okay, let's see. All right, so Ethan has put a link in the chat. And Imani says you can also go to Demos calculating calculator. Sorry, Demos graphing calculator. There we go. All right, so there's two possibilities that you can do. I'm sorry, Andre. All right, so I'm going to leave this up and then you can just feed the information in. It will create a graph for you. And then once you've created the graph, then you can answer questions 1 through 5. And no, we don't want an essay. So this is a graphing exercise, and can you read the graph exercise? That's what this is, the point of the activity. No, no essay. Make a graph. All right, so when you're doing the number of people, like the years you can span from the 1600s to 2000, let's do 2015 so that you're not running off the edge of the graph. You can make your people version go from 0 to 10 and do 2 boxes for each number so that you can do the half numbers as well as the whole numbers. Okay, so again, the number of people, you can use your vertical axis and you can do it from 0 to 10, but do every other box with your numbers so that you can do the 0.5 numbers as well as the whole numbers. And again, if you're plotting a graph, you will have a dot on the graph for every year that is listed. So on your graph for 1650, you should have a dot at 0.5 or 0.50. It's actually 0.5. 1750, you'll have a dot at 0.7. So actually, when you get started, those two dots will be kind of close together before you get to 1. And then after that, it starts to spread out 1, 2, then 2.5, then 3.3. But those first two will be kind of close together, except for they'll be spread out because of the year. All right, so hopefully everybody can get the graphing part done before the end of class today. And we'll make sure that we get the essay part done by next class. So this activity will be finished on Wednesday. Yes, so if you're doing it yourself, use the graph on the last page. Some folks are using the link. I don't know. Let me know how well that works. As far as that's feeding it a lot of information because you'd have to feed the information in for all of the years to go on your horizontal axis, and for your vertical axis, you would have to put in all of those points. It's almost easier to do it yourself. Because you can ask your Google Docs to create a graph if faster than using the graphing tool. But however you choose to do it, activity number 1 is create a graph, answer questions 1 through 5. And activity number 2 is to read, and I'm just going to move this just for a minute, is to read the article and answer questions 6 through 10. And again, there is a graph attached to the worksheet. So, okay, now I'm going to stay right here for those of you who need to see it. All right, folks, give me 1 minute. I'm going to try something else here. Did I download that? I think I did. Um, then come back over here. Okay, Audrey, I'm going to try to upload this one as a PDF, and maybe that one will work for you. And if I upload it as a PDF, you can download it in Kami. Okay, I have, all right, I've added the PDF link to the boxes, to the assignment box as well. So try that one. Or, hold on. All right, Anja, we got to find a way to make this work because we're not writing an essay. Again, if you would type your answers in a different color, that would be much appreciated. Makes it a lot easier. This is a big class and I got a lot to read. I don't want to go blind. All right, so like I said, if you were doing the graph manually, you should have not stopped at 2012, stop at 2015 or even 2020 would have been okay too, as far as drawing. Actually, it says make it go to 2050. So that gives you some extended room. For number 5, we don't really want the definition of exponential growth. It says based on this graph, what does that mean? So you want to say it grows exponentially by whatever number every so many years based on the graph. Again, for number 5, I don't want a definition of exponential growth. It says based on the graph. What is the exponential growth for this graph?
Can I send you the graph that I drew separately? Because for some reason, when I try to put it on the doc, it puts it on there like 3 times in 3 different spots, covering everything. And then when I try to delete them, it deletes everything. So can I just send it to you
So in the
separately?
folder, you're going to send 2 different documents, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Everybody, did you hear that? If you have to send your graph separately, send it in the same folder, but send it as 2 separate documents. All right, folks. So we're almost out of time. If you have any questions for me, now's the time. All right, so the objective was to try to get the graph finished this class, and we'll do the paragraph reading next test, but at the end of the day, everything needs to be uploaded on Wednesday. Okay. All righty.